to Talking Supply Chain. In each episode, top supply chain industry professionals and the nation's top thought leaders join host Brian Strait and share their unique insights to help supply chain managers stay one step ahead of their competition. This is Talking Supply Chain.
Welcome to Talking Supply Chain. I'm Brian Strait, your host. Today, we're diving into a topic that's rapidly moving from nice to have to must have, and that is sustainable procurement. With governments, customers, and investors all demanding greater accountability of businesses, procurement is no longer just about the cost and efficiency. It's about carbon, it's about resilience, and it's about long term value. Joining me today to discuss this is Dr. Luan Ho, Science Team Co-Lead at Tunley Environmental, a company that's at the forefront of helping organizations embed sustainability into their procurement practices. We're going to explore what sustainability procurement really means and how businesses can take advantage of that. Luan, welcome to the podcast.
Good afternoon. Oh, sorry. Good morning, Brian, for where you are. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Excited to get into this with you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
To get started, some people may not be familiar with Tunley, so maybe can you share a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Tunley Environmental and what you guys do and how you do it?
Yeah, for sure. So we are Tunley Environmental, a science-based sustainability consultancy. Most of our workforce is based in the UK, but we also have entity in the US and also in Mauritius. But we do have global client. So a bit about Tunley. Dr. William Beer, our CEO, he founded the company in 2017, which was formerly known as Tunley Engineering. So back then we did a lot of engineering recovery assessment for companies. And then in sort of 2021, in responding to the need for reducing carbon emissions, globally, we shifted our focus towards, environmental sustainability consulting. Since then, we have developed many services, fit for purpose, and also we are supporting business worldwide, with their decarbonisation journeys and also complying with regulations on not only carbon, but also, others environmental sustainability aspects, for example, biodiversity assessment and water assessment. So when it comes to environmental sustainability, we do a lot, and we always make sure that our service is science-backed. Myself, my name is Dr. Luan Ho. You can call me Luan. I came from quite a heavily academic background. So I had a PhD in environmental sciences. In particular, I was looking at submarine flows, in earth sciences. And then before that, I had done a degree in civil and environmental engineering. So my interest for environmental sciences and sustainability has already been established for quite a while. I joined Tunley in 2021, and loving my job here. I look to see how my expertise and how my skills and knowledge that I have gained from my education, can be put, in practice to support people with their decarbonisation journey. So at the moment, I'm one of the two science team co-leads at Tunley Environmental, obviously overseeing the day-to-day operation of the science team, leading the development of new services at Tunley, and I'm also Tunley's quality assurance manager, overseeing our ISO 9001 compliance. Yeah, so that is about Tunley and me.
That's great. Obviously, you're the smarter of the two of us, so I'm glad I'm asking the questions and you're giving the answers here.
Well, I wouldn't say so. So, yeah.
So let's get started. We're going to talk about a bunch of different things regarding sustainability during this conversation today. But I think to set kind of the baseline for the audience here, can you kind of really start by defining what sustainable procurement really is? I mean, what is that? Why is it so central to what businesses need to do today?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So sustainable procurement is quite a broad subject, for my opinion. And I think to talk about it, perhaps how about we narrow down to the carbon focus element of a sustainable procurement strategy. So if we talk about carbon emissions, I'm not sure how familiar the audience is with Step 1, Step 2, and Step 3 for carbon emissions. But basically, if you are a company and you would like to report to your greenhouse gas emissions on a yearly basis, then you will report to your direct emission scope in Step 1, indirect emission scope, which is Step 2, for your electricity and purchase heat or steam, and Step 3 for any other thing that you can imagine. So Step 3 is very extensive, for my opinion. You know, Step 1 is for direct emissions at the company. For example, if you use gas boilers for heating, or if you're driving company owned or company leased vehicles, then all of those emissions will form your Step 1.
Yeah.
So normally people can do really well with the control and also setting up strategies for Step 1 and 2. Because quite simply, Step 1 is what you are able to implement, measures to reduce. Step 2 is electricity. So, you might have solar panels, you might source electricity from renewable sources, but, if you can, and one, you have already done most of what you can for Step 1 and 2, what is next? So Step 3, because Step 3 is the indirect emission scope, it is quite hard to control.
Yep.
So, and most of Step 3 will be dependent on, your supply chains. And we have we have altogether 13 data categories in Step 3. And, one big item in the lots of 13 is purchase materials and services. So that's sort of necessitates the need for, a sustainably procured, material policy. So I think sustainable procurement is important because it reflects the effort of the whole value chain, the whole supply chain. So basically, that means not only you are as a company looking at your carbon emissions for the company, but also you kind of put the pressures on your suppliers as well to look at their emissions, which that will in turn request their suppliers, in the chain to do the same. So the first core values is the team effort, and the second one is that having a sustainable procurement strategy or a system in place will definitely fit into your company's wider sustainability target. So by saying a wider sustainability target, I mean it's not only just carbon or environmental. You will need to have, or you should have targets for social sustainability and for governance as well. So all the ESG will all come together. And another important thing about having a sustainable procurement is that it will help you strengthen your commitment with other parties in the value chain. And also the end goal of that is that throughout the value chain, throughout the supply chain, you will be able to produce sustainable products, which are fit for purpose and also help you enhance your circular economy in the industry. That is why it's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very big topic, and we're gonna in just a minute. I think we're gonna get into
So I mean,
suppliers' roles, right?
yeah,
But
I know, there was probably, an awful lot of information that I have
yeah,
just given, which probably doesn't make sense to some audience for now. But hopefully, by the end of this
I
podcast,
guess
I will be able to help,
yeah,
sort of, answer all the questions that you might have. Yeah.
yeah. So let's, like I said, we're gonna get to the supplier end of this in just a second.
Yes.
Let's start as before we get there though. Why don't you start with companies need to start this process, I think, right, with a carbon assessment. So can you kind of walk us through what a typical carbon assessment looks like and where procurement fits into that particular process?
Yeah, thank you. So at Tunley, we do offer, many greenhouse gas assessment, from building up your company's greenhouse gas inventory for you, um, train you on how to do it, or produce life cycle carbon assessment for products that you manufacturing. We do all of that, but sustainable procurement will come into the greenhouse gas inventory service that we do. So in order to do that, to do the assessment and to help people envision how their procurement processes will kind of feed into to the assessment, what we do is that we set up the project. We have kick-off meeting with client in order to establish all the reporting scopes that we were discussing a few minutes ago in the assessment. Say scope 1 and scope 2, they are mandatory. So the client will have to report scope 1 and 2. The 13 data categories in scope 3 are optional, and they can, now really sit down and think about, right, what is it of the 13 data categories will apply to my company, and how are we going to collect data for, and the sustainable procurement will come in, or the procurement bit will come in for the purchase goods and materials and services. AKA, say if you were a manufacturer of aluminium products, then the sourcing of the materials from your suppliers, they will need to go to the quarries, extracting the aluminium, refining the materials for you, and then sell the material to you. Then all of that emissions, which is upstream to your company, will be your scope 3. So that is where procurement come in. To give a bit more context, the transportation of the aluminium billet from your supplier to the manufacturing site will be your scope 3 as well. It will be part of the scope 3 reporting. So yeah, we set the meeting up. We establish the reporting scope with the client. We support them with the data collection, and also we conduct the carbon assessment for them at the end, and we get them a report and also formulate a roadmap to net zero carbon for them. Yes.
Yeah. So you mentioned scope 3 several times. Scope 3 is a big part of this, right? I think
Yes.
companies, it's fairly easy, I think, relatively speaking, for a company to identify its scope 1 emissions, right? Because it's
Yes.
responsible for those.
Yes.
Scope 2 is a little more difficult, but not totally difficult. When you get to scope 3, you're talking the suppliers farther down your supply chain.
Yeah.
So how do you engage your clients, or how do you help your clients engage those suppliers farther down the line so that they can reduce the indirect emissions that are contributing to your client's scope 3?
So, when we talk about suppliers and purchased materials, normally when you do an assessment, you can draw a line as to, for example, where your material come from. If you say, right, I set the boundary and I want to cover the carbon emissions for the transportation between the most upstream distribution point to the company, then you could do that. Some people, it says that, say if they import their material from, if they buy materials which have been imported from overseas, and they want to expand the reporting scope, and they say, oh right, actually I want to go a bit more further upstream to capture all those emissions from the sea freighting or the air freighting of the materials, then they could do that. So it's more about setting up the boundary and also being crystal clear about what you do in the assessment and what you are reporting.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure whether that answers your questions, but I always begin my discussion with client on scope 3 in my kickoff meeting by saying, scope 3, it's very simple, but it's really extensive because it covers technically anything that you can ever imagine at the company. Yeah, in support of your business.
Yeah. But those scope 3 suppliers, right? I mean, when companies think of their supply chain, right?
Yeah,
The company may be $1 billion company, but their
yeah,
suppliers and the suppliers down the supply chain are not $1 billion companies. In many cases, they're smaller businesses. So those businesses may lack resources to do more formal carbon accounting, right? So when you engage
yeah.
with your clients, what are some best practices for your clients to help get these smaller businesses on board with the carbon accounting? What
So
what can you do to help them do that?
yeah, so so it's a really good question. So what we do at Tonley is to promote knowledge sharing, both internally and externally. So when I work with clients, I normally say, if they're paying no attention, if they would like to learn, they might be able to do the assessment themselves for the year after it. So we do one thing called supply engagement, which is also a service at Huntley. So we offer clients who would like to have their client being fully on board, have their suppliers being fully on board with the process, because their suppliers, I keep saying clients, their suppliers, step 1 and 2, and even step 3 will form their step 3. Does that make sense? So say that the electricity that their client in step 3, that their supplier using step 3 will be electricity for their supplier in step 2 will be their step 3. Does that make sense? So what we do is that we ask them, right, would you like only to engage with your suppliers and take this further? We can do so many things. We can send out a survey template to, ask some questions from suppliers, whether they have done a carbon assessment, whether they got step 1, 2, 3 data, whether they have done life cycle carbon assessment for the products that they are selling to our client. We can also, have a presentations in which all the suppliers, from the client side will attend in order to basically share knowledge and to raise awareness about, sustainable procurement. And we incorporate all the survey returns into a report to give our client, to give them a base in terms of what they can do to promote more engaging activities with suppliers. They might be able to, or they might want to set up a system that qualify or disqualified, that they can use to qualify, disqualify their suppliers. Say, if you don't have your carbon report by, say, 2030, then we probably seek, alternative suppliers from somewhere else, that kind of thing. Or if they do have report for this year, then they might have a discount. Yeah.
So I all of this process, like anything in business, requires some level of communication, right? I mean, you gotta express expectations. So how important is that for the buyers, procurement buyers, for instance, to voice what the expectations are to the suppliers? And do you guys, or are there tools or frameworks available that can help make that dialogue a more productive conversation with the supplier instead of just you need to do this, period?
Yeah. So I get what you mean. It's highly important. It's imperative that the buyers, voice their opinions, voice their expectation to suppliers, and make sure that the suppliers know exactly what the buyers would like them to meet.
Right.
So we do help clients build a sustainable procurement system.
Mhm.
And, like I said, it might be the form of a list of questions that they can do to qualify and disqualify suppliers. And also it might be in the form of you set up a system that can that in a kind of on a phased basis. So you're not going to implement the whole system to disqualify a set of suppliers in the first year, because that might be seen, as unfairly disqualifying suppliers, and you don't want that either, which is an important the legal part, the important part of a sustainable procurement as well. So it's got to be fair, got to be transparent, and it got to be reasonable. So I think, technically there are so many things that we can do, but the first thing is to raise awareness from, suppliers, let them know what buyers would like them to meet, and also set up a framework for them to respond to. So when they respond to a tender as a supplier, so when they respond to a tender, they should be able to answer all the questions. And also, if they don't meet any certain criteria, then they might explain, whether there are any, extenuating circumstances that might help them qualify for the tenders. For example, one thing that people can do is to set up qualifying questions based on the size of projects. That can be one thing that people do. Yeah, but it's just really as and when, depending on the project and the size of the company, and also the natures of the products as well. Because, for example, if your products are so bespoke that you can only get from a certain numbers of suppliers, and I reckon there will be less room for you to play. And that might introduce a level of difficulty. Yes.
Yeah. Um, Shifting just a little bit, not surprisingly, there are global standards
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sustainable procurement.
Oh, indeed they are. Yeah,
Yes. So one of them is the ISO 2400.
yeah,
That is a global standard for sustainable procurement. Can you tell our
yeah.
audience a little bit what that actually is, what it requires, and how do organizations put it in practice?
Yeah. So, personally, ISO 20,400 is one that I'm really sort of passionate about, and it's one of my favorite topics. At the moment, well, not saying that they're going to change in the futures, but that's just something that I really enjoy doing. So in order to build a sustainable procurement system or a strategy, we can use ISO 20,400. Essentially, this one is a global guideline in order to that organization can use to help them basically buy services and material in a way that's better for the environment, for the society, and for the economy. So it's the system, the guidance does mention all the E, the S, and the G, which is the whole picture of what we're aiming for a sustainable business. And the guidance encourages a company to think beyond just price. So, for example, they should consider things, for example, ethical labor, make sure you don't use cheap labor or child labor, resource use, and also long-term impacts of your procurement strategy. The good thing about the standard is that it's very flexible, so it can be used by any organizations, regardless how big they are, how small they are. It helps businesses make smarter, more responsible choices when working with suppliers. And it shouldn't be seen as a tool to disqualify suppliers, but rather as a tool to promote good practices in the industry. So in overall, ISO 20,400 supports sustainable growth while reducing risks and also improving reputation for the company who implemented it. Yes.
Yeah. So those standards, they set a compliance level, but they also engage frameworks, right, that allow them, the companies, to build the resilience and the competitive advantage
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
things you
For
mentioned.
sure. I do believe, ISO 20,400 will fit into the company's quality system, ISO 9001, because it's part of the system, isn't it? Continuously improving company guidance, guidelines, and procedures. And also, more importantly, lots of companies these days, they do comply with ISO 14,001, which is an environmental management standard, if I remember correctly. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Want to jump to life cycle assessments. I
Yes.
know that's one of Tunley's pillars of sustainable procurement, if you will.
Yes.
So, two-part question here. Kind of, can you explain how a life cycle assessment works, and can you share an example of how an LCA may have revealed some hidden emissions or a risk in a supply chain for maybe one of your clients that you wouldn't have necessarily seen otherwise?
Yes. So when we talk about life cycle assessment or just LCA, people use the term LCA a lot, and sometimes they use it interchangeably between life cycle assessment and life cycle carbon assessment because they are both kind of LCA. So we talk about life cycle um, carbon assessment first because this is, it's only report to one environmental indicator, which is carbon or greenhouse gas emission that you might want to call it. Um, in a nutshell, you have a product and you would like to look at the carbon impact of the product on the environment throughout the life cycle of the product. Then you will need to look at all the emissions from all the life cycle stages of the product, all the way from material sourcing to disposing. So we have modules A1 to A3, which include the extraction, the emission from the extraction of the raw material in order to make the usable materials, the transportation of the raw material to manufacturing site, and also the emission from manufacturing processes. Those three are A1, A2, A3, or what you might call cradle to gate emissions. And then after that, you have A4, which is the emission from the transportation of your finished or unfinished product from the factory to a site. And then A5 would be the emission from the building up of the final products on site or the installation on site. After that, you have the U stage, which include B1 to B7. So B1 to B5 covers use, maintenance, repair, refurbishment, and there's one other thing. But basically, B1 to B5, sorry, I should remember this by heart. So B1 to B5 will covers all the emissions from the maintenance and the usage, and B6 will cover emissions from energy usage. B7 for water, for example. B6 and B7 are commonly referred to as operational carbon. And then you come to the end of life when you have C1, which is the deconstruction of the products, C2, C3, and C4 are for disposing, recycling, and transportation of the demolished materials to processing site. So when we do a life cycle carbon assessment, we are looking at the carbon impact at each and every single stage of the life cycle of the products. But when we do a life cycle assessment, in general, we look at more than just carbon. So we will be looking at, carbon, also the water usage, the water resources usage, ozone depletion, for example, and a few others or many others environmental indicators. And this is what we do at Tunley, alongside the production, conducting greenhouse gas inventory. We do life cycle assessment for clients as well. Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned things beyond carbon. I think when people think about
Yeah.
sustainable procurement, the obvious thing that pops to mind is carbon emissions, right? But
Yeah.
there's much more to it, as you've alluded to. Can you kind of talk about how procurement teams can integrate things like biodiversity, social value, ethical sourcing, et cetera, into their processes? Because that's all part of sustainable procurement.
Yeah, so when I think in order to set up a thorough sustainable procurement system, they really needs good knowledge about not only just carbon, because very often when we say something green, we refer to just carbon. But what about biodiversity? What about water usage? What about pollution? Which might come in place. So I think in order to sorry. Yeah, I apologize if I don't answer your question, to the way that you are expected. But the way that a company can look at setting up their sustainable procurement system is they need to grasp a good understanding of all the environmental topics, or at least those very common ones mandated by the guidance, and also more importantly, see how each and every of them interact. For example, one thing that can be carbon effective might not be biodiversity beneficial. So we need to know all the interaction, and we need to make a smart decision about what indicators that we are prioritizing, and how we're gonna set up a system that will be fit for purpose and will be practical and reasonable. Yes.
Yeah. Another topic we've seen in sustainable procurement and sustainability in general, right, with ESG, is the concept of greenwashing. right?
Yes,
You
yes.
know, where companies kind of, hey, report stuff, but they're not actually doing it. So, what
Yeah.
advice can you give companies that to verify and ensure that what they report from a sustainability perspective is transparent, but more importantly, is defensible?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I'm really proud of at Tunley is to provide a science-backed service, to people, because I think we we don't want to just get people a report that contain figures, pretty figures, and people can take away to market it out, but rather we want to get them a report that can be that, say, for example, when they are criticized by their client and when they are asking the question critically, they can say, the report is science-based, and Tunley, we have to use that standard, that standard to do a report for them, and basically want to make sure that the report can hold up to scrutiny when it comes to that.
Yeah.
So in the UK, there's a standard called the Green Claim Code, which is a very important one in marketing, and companies in the UK can be fined for market products as green without evidence or without proper evidence backing what they say in the claim. Um, and the worst thing is that, the company that markets something out that isn't really green as they want it to be, as they thought it would be. So I do believe in delivering, science-based services, and I do think companies, um, should always do their own due diligence check when it comes to publish something on their website, when it come to, marketing their products out as green, and also when it comes to just any communication on sustainability, not only just for carbon, but also for their social values, for their governance value as well, because everything is highly important when it comes to making sure that we do not make a fraud claim. Yeah.
Yeah. I got a couple more questions I want to get to before we run out of time, but I want to give you a chance to share maybe a case study or two, if you have one, on how sustainable procurement has actually made a difference in the company either winning a contract or maybe a huge emissions cut that they were able to promote in some way. Do you have an example of that, of how it actually works in practice?
Yeah, we do have many examples, and let me think about one that I have done or one that I'm doing. So, so we have been working with a company on a retainer basis. Basically, we are, providing services
Mhm.
on a subscription basis over a year. They came back second year, and we're doing more work for them. So what we were helping them last year was to build a carbon reporting system for their supply chain data.
Yeah.
Say, they report us their data, so the emission data from all the purchased materials and services of the company. And now they are actively engaging with the suppliers, service providers, actually, in order to source, sustainable services. And I think that is a good thing. So we supported them with setting up the system to report data accurately. We conducted a supplier engagement survey program for them, collated the data from all the survey returns, reported that to them, and now they are, continuously working with their suppliers to source, green products. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there are companies out there that probably want to embark on a sustainability journey, but when they look at it, the process can be long, the investment can be great, at least initially, for
Yeah.
that. So, is there a way? Can you offer any advice to these companies? Are there any quick wins that they can get early in the process that because sometimes getting that quick win builds momentum, right? It helps build the momentum towards the
Yeah.
longer term goal. So, are there quick wins that companies can look for to kind of get started on this process?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe this is a long process, and it's it isn't meant to be easy. So
Yeah.
it's important that companies engage with experts in order to get the momentum going. One thing that they want to do, I mean, the thing is, if you imagine some company, they do have a sustainability champion in-house, and
Yeah.
that will help a lot, from knowledge sharing, upskilling to actually producing the system. But some companies they don't have an in-house sustainability or a carbon champion, and that makes things really hard because that shouldn't be seen as a side job um, to anyone. This is I would say it's a full-time job. So the very first thing that I would do is to make sure there is an in-house person who can take care of this one, even if you will be engaging with a consultant like ourselves, for example, at Hunley, to work with. You will need someone at your company to work with first to ask, act as the point of contacts for all the communications, to promote a good collaboration, and that will be the first thing that I do. So make sure we establish um, a leadership kind of system. So we have someone to um, take care of this aspect of the business because it shouldn't be seen as a side job. Yes.
Yeah. So somebody that owns the process, right?
Yeah,
And is responsive
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah.
They need to take ownership of this one. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to get one final question in. From your perspective, in the few minutes we have left, we are seeing a lot of change in supply chain these days with AI, more data,
Yeah.
um, stricter reporting and compliance requirements taking place in all sorts of
Yeah.
industries and all sorts of areas, including sustainability and the ESG
Yeah.
world. So, if you don't mind putting on your kind of futuristic hat, if you will, for the moment,
Yes.
do you see the concept of sustainable procurement evolving much over the next several years? Is there a lot of change that we could potentially see in the space?
I think, um, I think that, the world is changing day by day, right? So with AI coming in, a lot of processes can be automated.
Yeah.
So we can use AI to our benefit. But I don't think AI can replace the human element in setting up a sustainable procurement.
Mhm.
So, for example, when I were talking about taking ownership earlier, it's important that everything that we do is fully checked. And that is something that I think AI might get there one day. But, bias check, for example, is something that we need to kind of be very careful about. So I think, given the technological landscape with AI at the moment, it can be used as a tool, but people need to have proper training. And
Mhm.
also they need to be aware of all the risks together with all the opportunity as AI can offer when it comes to setting up a sustainable procurement system. Um, but company shouldn't use it as a shortcut, as a, you know, to build their sustainable procurement system without, you know, involving expert opinions for checking.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Luan. We're just about out
You're
of time.
welcome.
If Great conversation. If people want to get in touch with Tunley, maybe want to learn more, maybe they want to get started on their own sustainability journey. What's the best approach for them to connect with you guys?
So they can always drop an email to our company email address, um, info@tunley, TUNLEY hyphen environmental.com. Or if they would like to, chat to me about carbon, about biodiversity, or about sustainable procurement systems, then they can drop me an email as well at luanho, LUANHO, at tunley environmental.com. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. We are out of time today. I want to thank my guest, Luan Ho of Tunley Environmental, and of course, all of you who have taken time to listen to us today. We greatly appreciate it. You can find new episodes of Talking Supply Chain on scmr.com or wherever you get your podcasts, so be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, this is Brian Straight, and you've been listening to Talking Supply Chain.
Talking Supply Chain is produced by Supply Chain Management Review and Peerless Media. You can find it on scmr.com, supplychain247.com, iTunes, Google Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcasts. For more information on this topic or to sign up for our weekly newsletter, a print or a digital subscription to our publication, visit scmr.com. We hope you will join us for our next episode. For Supply Chain Management Review, I'm Brian Straight, and thank you for listening.